Welcome. Before we get started, let me show you a quick overview of the sheets that I'll be using for this condition report. I'd like to introduce you to the practice of condition reporting. As the name suggests, this is the practice by which we report on the condition of an object or an artwork as it exchanges hands, when it is being assessed during an annual inventory, or if there has been an event that has compromised the item, such as a flood or some other event similar. At the top, you can see we have an area where you can insert the company name, the museum, the gallery, or the artist studio. In our first box, we first indicate the ID number. This is a unique identifier that is more reliable than using the artist name or the title of work. This is a unique identifier that can differentiate easily between different objects, especially in the event where objects might be titled similarly or the same in the event that an artist titles an object or does not title an object, and so it goes as untitled. We want to make sure to identify who has prepared this document, and that's for accountability, of course, in the event that there is a question about the reporting or there needs to be a confirmation that the reporting was done as it is indicated in the document. Adding the date, of course, is good practice, but also it allows us to understand that this is the condition of this object at this time. And so if there is anything that occurs to that object after this date, we know that there has been some wear and tear and potentially some damage caused after this document was prepared. This is in many ways a document that can be used to identify, for insurance purposes, which parties might be responsible for the repair and conservation of the object. But of course, it is also important for insurance purposes as well as for tax purposes to identify if there is a change in the value of the object due to any type of compromise. We have a section here for provenance. That is the location. That is different than the provenance, which we'll indicate later on in this document. Street address, city, and country. You can, of course, add more information here if you wish. This document, by and large, has been compiled from other documents that I've seen over my career. I feel like this is a very good general condition report. It is not specific to any one particular industry, although it is more specific to the fine arts world than it would be for, say, a museum dealing in antiquities. I also like to identify the purpose of the report, whether this is for an accession or an acquisition, an exhibition, whether it is on loan from another gallery, for sales, potentially. Of course, annual inventory is important. And then there is an option for other. Finally, in this box, we can indicate whether this is an incoming item or an outgoing item. Working down the document, now we have the particulars of the object, the artist's name, the title of the work, the date that it was created. As well, we have the dimensions of the work, the height, the width, the depth, and of course indicate whether that be in metric or imperial units. We have the signature here, so you can list that it has been signed, titled, dated on the back, on back top middle, on back bottom right, what have you. Here's a very quick material summary. We can state that it is oil on canvas, oil on panel, acrylic, bronze, so on, ceramic, so on and so forth. In the event that we have an object that is composed of multiple different materials, we might want to indicate the number of components. Mixed media is commonly made up of many different materials, as the name suggests. And so we might feel it's important to indicate how many different components contribute to that artwork. In this next section, we can then further indicate the individual components. And this is so that we can understand exactly what is part of this artwork as a whole, whether that be a typewriter, a piece of electronic equipment, canvas, a wooden structure, so on and so forth. This is where we would indicate. And to be fair, some objects can have more than 9 different components. However, I felt this was a good starting point. Our next area is where we are able to go into more description about the condition of the object. This box here is where you might write out what the condition of that object is. And then in this box, what we'll do is we'll actually indicate which areas might be of concern. Oftentimes you may copy and paste a black and white image into this area so that you can draw or write on top of that object, or that image, I should say. And that will provide us more insight into what is going on with this object. You can indicate here, of course, that there is more information on the reverse. And so if this is not enough space for you to capture the condition description, you can, of course, then add on to that. At the bottom, we have a really quick go-to for anyone who is responsible for that object, whether that be the gallerist, the conservator, the director, the curator, what have you. We have 4 sections here. So we have the general condition, whether it's in excellent to poor condition, the stability of the object, which is important and also works in tandem with any action that may need to be taken. Urgency would be mostly kind of referencing whether or not this is required for an exhibition, an upcoming exhibition, or if it's being sold, or has been sold, or of course if it's just simply going to be going back into storage in the event that we're doing an annual inventory check. Of course, this column here is very important, especially if there is a concern with the object. If there's no concern, of course, we're going to accept it as it is. If there is some concern, high-level concern, we'll need to refer this to a conservator for their assessment, and potentially some repair will need to be carried out. Otherwise, if there is some issue with it, but it isn't a major issue, perhaps that be a minor surface scratch or a dent or something, we can monitor it to make sure that it doesn't get worse. There is a space for other as well, which is just simply good practice, I think, on my behalf. On the back of our piece, we now have a section where we can add in the provenance, the ownership. This lends to the credibility of the work. And if this is, of course, verifiable, then we have good provenance, which indicates that this is a credible work and that we should accept that it is done by who it says it's done by and should be valued as such and not a fake. Here is your section for additional notes. As I said, this is for a general condition report. This is all that I have on this document. In my opinion, this covers a fair amount of ground in terms of ensuring that you know and are aware of the state that that object is in. At this point, we're going to look at a real-life example of carrying out a condition report in preparation for shipping a work. I'd also like to add that you can identify the storage location where this item might be found in your provenance and location information. Please note, I would never write on top of the work. I'm just doing it like this for convenience because this is really not an item of any significance. Having already filled out the above portion of the form, I've mocked up what could be some concerns on this work using masking tape. I'm going to sketch the dimensions of the work in the areas of concern so that we can better map out the location of the issues. Just shade in the areas outside the work to omit them. I'm going to indicate that there is a scratch up here and a dent in the middle. Once we've assessed the front of the work, we'll turn it over and record the signature, title, and date. I want to define the concerns as best I can. Let's write this in as light scratch, 2 inches, top left. For the dent, we'll list it as dent 4 by 2 inches center. At the bottom here, we're going to list this as fair condition. Not good or excellent, as if it might have come off the artist's easel, but fair, because we have some minor condition issues. We'll mark it as being stable, and we'll mark the urgency as being low. Then, of course, we'll indicate that a conservator should take a look at this to address the condition. There is a veritable plethora of terms that can be used to describe concerns like crazing, crackling, inclusion, dent, bend, tear, scratch, and on and on. It's worth getting to know some of these terms if you are carrying out assessments on a regular basis, so you can adequately describe what's really going on in the work. On the back here is a place where we can indicate the provenance or the ownership of the work, and finally a spot for additional notes that you might want to include. And with that now, let's put this away for now and move on to wrapping the work. You might want to make sure that there is a digital copy of this and also a copy that can accompany the work when it is going to be shipped to another location. Thank you for joining me, and happy trails. If you want to know more about the technical world of art, like and subscribe.